I'll just be honest.
No. Don't be honest. That's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do
I'm
here.
just going to be honest here. When I have, sometimes I do, come around my peers and they'll ask me like, how many houses have you sold? And then they'll start talking about like, oh, there's no inventory, or there's, we all, and even non-agents, everyone has this misperception.
Got it.
And they believe that, there's no houses on the market. And I say, I'm not boastful. So I don't know, I don't know. But I know that I'm selling houses and I know that my clients are buying houses and they're, finding the homes that they want. And even in multiple offer situations, getting them under contract has been, my goal. I like to win for my clients. I love to call them the next day and say, guess what? You got your offer accepted.
Welcome to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, and you want to learn some of the insider secrets and uncensored truths from the true professionals in and around real estate, you've come to the right place. Now, let's buckle up for the uncensored truth about real estate and join your host, Brian Cardenas.
All right, welcome back to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for joining us. And as you know, nothing is off limits here. And like we like to do all the time is make sure we bring people on the show here that can share some of the real unvarnished truth about things related to real estate. And in doing that, we like to actually have people on here that know what they're doing. So we brought Melani Beauregard onto the show to join us today and talk to us about some things in real estate that people don't typically know, but they probably should know. So I first want to say welcome to you, Melani.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So, big question of the day then. What is it that people don't know about real estate or things related to real estate that they probably should know? Because that's a big problem for the consumer.
I really don't want to say this because it seems like something common sense that people should know, but it does. Not all realtors and not all loan officers are created equal.
Very true.
So I would say that what people need to know is that they have the right to interview multiple realtors and multiple loan officers so they can find the right fit. And I think that that's really important, just like a job interview.
Yeah.
So you'd want to be able to make sure you have somebody that has experience and is available and that has, the patience to help you through the process.
Right. And that's a hard thing for people to be able to do. Like, I think sometimes people feel uncomfortable in doing that. And they feel like, the first person that they talk to is the one that they should go with because they don't want to offend them.
Right.
But like, you're used to that, aren't you? Getting interviewed by people and maybe having them talk to 2 or 3 people, right? Right.
I encourage that, actually. I would rather them know the difference than to feel like they went with their first. I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty of having that in the past. So I definitely want to be able to say, yeah, go ahead and interview multiple people. I'd love that. I'd rather feel like I was chosen anyway.
Yeah, it makes you feel special.
Yeah.
So that's a really tough thing for people to know. What are the questions that they should be asking you to try to figure out if you're going to be the right person for them? Because I think a lot of people just go off their gut feeling. And there's something to be said for a gut feeling, but I think there's a lot more to it. So like, what would you suggest people ask an agent that they're interviewing for the job?
Well, I definitely would ask how many years they've been in the business with that, and not just that, because that doesn't really tell everything, but just how many transactions have you, done? How many families have you helped? That's the same question in one, and then what is your availability? Do you work on weekends? Do you work after hours, after my hours? And then obviously, if they don't find them to be resourceful, I know if I'm hiring somebody to do a job for me, like in landscaping, for example, I don't know anything about trees. I don't know anything about plants, bushes, whatever. So I'd want somebody that knows. If I'm asking them and I'm like, well, what is this? What is this plant? And then they tell me, and then what is this tree? And then I'm like, I don't know. Then that's probably not the right person, to hire for that job. But I would say the same with realtors. Like, what areas are you familiar with? How long have you lived in the valley? How many transactions or how many houses have you sold? Things like that. Do you have people to refer me to? yes, I think that somebody who has like, a handful of people to refer to in anything that you need for a home purchase, I think that does matter, because if you don't, bought a house before, you don't know who to call when your AC goes out, or you don't know who to
Right.
call when you need the roof repaired, or you don't know who to call to get an inspection.
Yeah.
Things like that.
And that's one of the things that you do as a professional is like you create that network of people that you can refer your clients to.
Right.
And I think it's super important for people to understand that we were just talking about this a moment ago, is that, everybody's so used to being on their phones and doing everything on their phones, like buying a house, buying a car, getting their groceries delivered, getting takeout food, whatever. Like you can do everything on your phone, but there's something that's lost there. Like you don't have a personal referral to someone that has experience with that professional. And I think it's super important for people to trust the professional. Like when you've settled on a real estate agent that you think is going to be the best person for the job, after asking them all those important questions, then do something crazy and listen to them. Listen to the advice and the recommendations that they give, right? Because you're doing it for a reason, right?
Right.
It's to make it successful.
It is. It is scary out there, and sometimes I've referred people that didn't, do a good job, unfortunately, and so there's a lot of things that go into making that decision. Even if somebody did refer me to them, did I say that right? Even if somebody referred a client to me or a friend, I still would want them to interview me.
Sure.
I still think that they should still be able to make their own decision, not wholly depend on the other person. I think that if the other person, they do have trust in them, that's natural, then you want to trust. But you should still interview your prospective agent or loan officer.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, I think people have to make an educated and informed decision, and you take all that stuff in. It's a challenge when it's somebody just going off on their own and trying to find something that they have no idea what they're doing. Like they don't do real estate transactions all the time. Mm-hmm. You got to find somebody that does it enough to have a good understanding of what the process is, and especially the market that we're in. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see for buyers in this market that we're in?
Well, we'll just talk about a buyer that was recent, and I think the biggest fear was based off of what they were qualified for, and they thought there's no way they could buy a house. And I could understand their feelings and relate to that, because it has been a very tough market. And so I would think that one of the things that I've learned is that it's just the more efficient you are, the more go-getter you are, utilizing all your resources as a realtor has really helped a lot of my clients, because this isn't a wait around and see what happens type of market. Yeah. It's a if you want to buy a home, let's be first in line, let's put together a plan, and then sometimes it does take being first in line. Because I just think that, not first offer in isn't always going to win. But if you're, I'm not going to wait till the weekend's over then to go show the house. And then, sometimes I've noticed on the listings, some agents will say, oh, we're going to, wait till Tuesday to make a decision. Well, I don't always believe that, because I think that any seller, if they had a good offer come in, they could change their mind, and they're allowed to. So I'm constantly always trying to be like, I know that it says, that, but let's go check it out now. See, what your options are. Coming soon listings, I've sold a lot of those. Yes, it says it's coming soon, but again, if you're a seller and you have a good solid offer, would you turn it down and wait?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not the case. So just being creative and resourceful and asking lots of questions. I take pride in that.
Well, and that's probably one of the things that an agent can do the most, I think, to have success, is to try to build that relationship, rapport with a listing agent, and ask a lot of questions, because you can find out a lot about what the sellers are looking for by having that conversation, can't you?
Right. Just like you're a loan officer, right?
I think so.
Okay, I didn't know what you'd like to be called. But I think that
Superhero is also
right.
another title we use sometimes. But.
So if you've never bought a home before, even if you bought a couple homes, you don't know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything yet. We still are learning constantly. But I would imagine if you were to hire somebody like you or I to help somebody buy a home, we're going to hopefully, I don't know, I feel like I would like to be an advocate for my client, ask extra questions that they didn't know to ask, just based on my experience. Same with you. I mean, you have different options that they didn't know that they had. So presenting them. So it's, I never want a client to come back to me and say, well, why didn't you tell me that was an option? So I do my best. I'm not perfect. I'm obviously human.
Right.
But I try to at least allow them to have options, and then educate a lot, refer to really great preferred vendors, and then that helps out a lot too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't really understand is what it takes to be able to buy a house. And there's a lot of misperception out there. Mm-hmm. What's the most common misperception that you see people have on the buyer side about whether or not they can purchase a property?
Well, right now, I mean, the biggest what did you say?
Misperception?
Yeah, is that a word? I don't know.
We're going to have a vocabulary test later.
Okay, I was thinking, for some reason, it's just not a word I use, and I just thought. But anyway, there's that you have to spend, thousands of dollars over list price, to be able to get in a home. That hasn't been the case for me. In the last 2 years, I mean, I've sold a couple hundred houses, and I've been very lucky in a lot of cases. Some of my clients weren't even the highest. And also, they think that you have to have cash, and that's not always the case. And it's definitely not. It has been where, people can have a strong enough loan, or even like in your case, you can get them pre-approved, and that's as good as cash. So, and as far as, cash buyers, yes, they're out there, but my clients have beat them too, and they're financed. So I think that there's a lot more to a contract, that some agents more than others are more familiar with the contract in the state of Arizona. So then there's different things that we can still do, not just about the price, that would make our offer stronger. And I think that's where experience comes in to play, and looking at the big picture and trying to make everyone happy. So the seller's happy, the buyer's happy, that's important.
I think so. The couple of big things that you pointed out there is you don't have to pay cash for a house to get a house. Mm-hmm. You don't have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars over list price to get a house. And what are a couple other things that you find? I mean, because I think sometimes people think they got to have a lot of money to be able to put down or to get into a house. That's not true, is it?
No, and so I think that I love helping people to buy houses, and even at their first-time home buyer, and especially when they think that they just have to keep renting. And there's just so much that I love to share with other people based on their credit score, their income, what they're paying in rent right now, what they're going to have to pay to get into another rental. That money can actually be applied towards a down payment. Obviously down payment assistance is on a hold right now, but that was really fun to help people get into a home that way. But just by using what they would have paid towards a security deposit plus their first month's rent, plus cleaning deposits. But then even that though, I mean, if you have, I don't know this, but you know it more than I do, but a decent credit score, you can do 3% down on a first time home buyer, plus if they haven't bought a house in the last 3 years or something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the credit score requirement is pretty low. I mean, it's technically 620. We don't usually see them get approved with that kind of a score. But if you get into the 680 to 700 range, we can usually see a first-time buyer get approved for their financing. And it's very different because we hear a lot in the market, you got to have lots of cash. You got to waive appraisal contingencies. You got to have, 20% down. You can't buy a house if you got 3% down. We're in the middle of working with a client right now. That's 3% down, no appraisal contingency waiver, and you're under contract. It does exist out there. And I think the thing that the consumers out there have to realize is that the attitude, I think, of their realtor is super important. because if somebody's made up their mind that it's not going to happen, guess what? Ain't going to happen. Like if you've made up your mind that we're going to find a way, there's usually a way to find the way. That doesn't happen all the time. Doesn't mean you're going to get your first offer accepted, but sometimes you do get your first offer accepted. Well,
and I'll just be honest.
No, don't be honest. That's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do
I'm
here.
just going to be honest here. When I have, sometimes I do, come around my peers and they'll ask me like, how many houses have you sold? And then they'll start talking about like, oh, there's no inventory, or there's, and even non-agents, everyone has this misperception.
Got it.
And they believe that, there's no houses on the market. And I say, I'm not boastful. So I don't know, I don't know. But I know that I'm selling houses and I know that my clients are buying houses and they're, finding the homes that they want. And even in multiple offer situations, getting them under contract has been, my goal. I like to win for my clients. I love to call them the next day and say, guess what? You got your offer accepted. And that happens a lot. And I believe that I do follow, I think that a lot of people have superstitions or any type of like ritual that they follow to be successful. And mine is to be positive. So even when my clients want a house, I'm like, okay, now it's your house. Like I'm going to start thinking it's your house. I'm going to start thinking I'm going to win the contract. I already start the process mentally of knowing that they're going to get their offer accepted, and it just happens that way. And does it happen 100% of the time? No, but it's pretty high. I'm going to give myself a 90%. I'm going to give myself a 90%.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. So still an A, right?
I think they still grade.
Or is that
90.
Yeah.
No, that's still an A.
Okay. I'm going to give myself an
A. So on the listing side of it, when you're representing a seller, then what do you find to be the biggest challenge for sellers in this market? Because everybody thinks it's a cakewalk for sellers. They get whatever they want. What's the challenge that you think is out there as the primary thing for sellers in this market? I mean,
you might be able to answer this question better than I, but I found that there has been a lot more cancellations than you would think. Mm-hmm. And even getting on the phone, with, let's say there's a house on the market that's under contract, I will call them and say, so where are you at in the process? Have you gone through the Binzer yet? And how's the appraisal doing? Because, it seems like everyone's so eager to win, so they'll do whatever it takes, but then they don't realize that they just maybe are buying a house that they didn't want, or like maybe they overextended themselves, and so then they end up canceling. So I'm constantly, calling people like that to see. And I totally forgot what you asked me.
The challenge for sellers in the market.
Okay, so the sellers, going back to that in the point,
cancellations.
Yeah, the cancellations is so it's not always about the highest and the highest offer, yep. Or even always about a cash offer. A lot of times cash does cancel a lot too. Yep. So it's really just and this, there's no like real magic about it, but it's more really, I think, vetting the loan officers. Like, do your client just, a service and have the interview with the lender. A lot of people, I don't think, do that. A lot of agents don't do that anymore because maybe they had like multiple offers and they don't want to contact all the lenders. Or if you're a buyer's agent, copy your loan officer on the offer and encourage them to contact the listing agent directly, so that they can share with them what their program is, how solid their buyer is, and things like that. Because you and I both know a pre-qualification letter can be, anybody could write that, right?
Yep.
And anybody could write an offer, and anybody could put as much as they want on there. That doesn't mean they're going to actually end up being able to afford or pay that. So, and then every little bit part of the process counts. So like, some people don't know, or I should say some realtors don't know, and maybe they weren't educated yet that, the taxes, insurance, HOA, that all goes into the payment. So even if and then they maxed out their client on their pre-approval or how much they're pre-qualified for and didn't realize that, oh, this area has like 2,500, which is really low for Arizona.
Yeah.
And we're so lucky, taxes, and we have like $150 HOA. Like, how come they can't get approved? Well, they didn't know prior. And then the listing agent might not have done the due diligence to realize like they didn't really qualify.
Yeah.
And the lender didn't know either.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, we're so excited to get them under contract, we forget all the little details. And
and this market is really hard because everybody's trying to push it, and never has it ever happened that, a pre-qualification is issued for a buyer and then the realtor writes an offer above that pre-qualification amount. Never happened. But
I just feel like you're being sarcastic. I get that. I feel like you're being a little bit sarcastic right now.
Just a tad. But it happens, and like you said, the other factors that go into the payment also happen. But like from the seller side of it, it really does come down to what is the most likely offer to close, because people get fixated on the price. Like what's the highest one? And like a lot of times, it used to be the cash offers were lower. Now sometimes some of the cash offers are higher, but a lot of times those are the ones that are canceling because they're not seeing a property. They're just throwing offers out there. I mean, there's literally companies out there that have people on their headsets. They see a listing come out and they're just typing up an offer and sending it in and trying to get that offer. And no one's ever seen it. It's some hedge fund or investor that's doing this. And then once they start working through all the numbers and doing everything, doing the due diligence on the property, well, then it falls apart. And so the listing agent really has to vet those offers out. And I can tell you from my side of it, when an agent doesn't tell us that they're writing an offer so that we can be proactive about reaching out to the listing agent, because, we send out a video telling them the buyer's qualifications. I also call on top of that, try to get a hold of the listing agent. Don't always get a hold of them. That's why I started doing the videos a couple of years ago. But when I don't have the foreknowledge of that offer going out, I rarely get a call from the listing agent. And I understand it's a function that they're busy. Some agents will do it no matter what. Some agents won't. If they're too busy, they have too many offers. But you're doing a disservice, in my opinion, on the listing side of it if you don't vet those offers out before you take one. And then you have it fall apart. Like we just had a client who lost out on an offer a week ago. Lo and behold, that fell apart. Now they're under contract on the house that they wanted. And it's keeping in touch with the listing agent, on the buyer side of it. Like if you're calling and checking on those things, that's fantastic, because now you're going to find out if something's teetering, and about ready to fall apart, and you can jump in there and get it.
Well, and I mean, a lot of it, like you said, is based on availability and having, like, to me, when you're calling and you have to be like, press 1 for someone, and you go through this whole thing, you spent like 5 minutes getting to what you thought was the right department, and then they go to voicemail. So, I mean, that's like the worst feeling, right? And then you wonder like, oh my gosh, this is like, I can't even get a hold of anybody. Like, anybody even work for this company? And so you already start like the process feeling this way. And I think that feeling matters. So like when you're, for the whole transaction. So like if you call and the listing agent answers, that's amazing. Like I want to, I already like feel like they're my best friend, and then, the loan officer, like he's available on a weekend. What? That's awesome. And then they answer their phone and their text messages. That's really cool. And then you have same with title, same with, everybody that plays their role in the transaction. All these moving parts matter for how the whole entire transaction is going to go. And I think that's what's so important, is doing your due diligence has to do with that too. So it's, it will set the tone, from the get-go and how the transaction is going to go. Now, obviously, we know there's certain things that are out of our control, like when our client goes in, maybe they bought 2 cars and they didn't know they weren't supposed to in the middle of a transaction. Things like that could happen. Or they quit their job because they just the loan got approved and they didn't know they had to still keep their job. Things like that. So, but that's also our job to continue to educate them throughout the process and say, just a reminder, this and that, or just having good communication skills, I think, matters. So again, like, do we want to work with a company who never answers their phone, goes to voicemail? That doesn't feel good. I feel like that matters in how we communicate to our clients, to help them to understand, like, this is how it's supposed to be, versus, having to make excuses for everybody involved. I mean, I don't like doing that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to, and I think that all of us, I think the best service that we can do for our clients too is, like, a little bit about my job. I know a little bit about your job. I know a little bit about title job, everybody. So then that we can help to come together and have understanding, in the background what it takes. because it's not, if they made it so easy to buy a house, then everyone, we'd all be buying houses.
Well, and that's the thing is like people have gotten used to everything being so automated and online and impersonal. And the reality of a real estate transaction is that's not what it's about. Like it's still people dealing with people. You're still talking about, a family selling a house, a family buying a house, and individuals who have to do all of the different parts of the job to make it work. Maybe we'll get there at some point, but it's not an automated process that you can just have computers and artificial intelligence do everything. And when you bring people into the mix, then you have to have people that are capable and that communicate well and are working toward that common goal. Because it's not like I see sometimes, people will get kind of an adversarial perspective about it. Like, oh, this is my client. I'm gonna take advantage of everything that I can over this person. It's like you don't really get to a winning place at the end if one person is being taken advantage of through the process. Like there's goals that seller has, there's goals that a buyer has, and it's just about finding that common ground and that middle ground to where both people can walk away from it feeling good and feeling like they won and they got what they wanted out of the transaction.
Right. And to speak to what you just said too, I'm all for it. Like if you can be a for sale by owner, then that's great. And if you had experience in that, that's awesome. And, I've had family members. I've had one, which my own parents, they did a for sale by owner FSBO for their mother. My grandmother passed away, but, and it went perfectly smooth for them. Lucky them. And then I have another one that did that same thing, where then called me, a week later, please help us. Like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And, so, that's, unfortunate, but I'm glad that I was able to help them. But just like, as we know, not every single transaction is the same. And there's things that can come up that would need more experience and expert, ways of doing so. For example, I had somebody who, unfortunately, so I learned after the fact, because the way that they took title, it looked fine and well on the assessor's website, but then in the background, what, the escrow officer they can pull showed that they didn't accept title properly 20 years ago. So there was a small probate issue, and if it wasn't for me having the right contacts in place, we got it done within like 3 days that it got fixed.
Wow.
Sometimes you'd be like, oh my gosh, well now we have to, go through these like months of probate and we didn't even know, but like just having the resources available and having the right people in place that knew what they were doing made a big difference, and it's a huge life thing for these people that are selling their house. So it was really necessary. And just so there's so much to real estate, there's so many different things that can come up. There was a deal that almost canceled we lost a deal because, the buyer, the lender who had pre-qualified them, they didn't calculate their schooling properly and didn't know that the job that they had actually didn't specifically relate to their schooling. So they weren't able to use the full 2 years for their job history, I think they needed. And so then last minute this happened, and, thankfully that agent was so concerned about his reputation, because he put his reputation on the line when we did the whole acceptance. He ended up buying the house, and then rented it back to his like family member. But long story short, those little things that are in place that, matter when you pick your right loan officer, that does their homework, that, in the realtor who stepped up and did that these are people's lives. My client was selling their house and buying another house. I had a contingency. Do you know that I've actually gotten contingent offers accepted in this market?
Yeah, it's amazing that actually happens. Huh?
Did you know that happens? Well, I have. And then that, those things matter. So every player in place, like it does make a difference to people's lives. And you want to have the right people on the team, that have they have knowledge and experience and resources, all that matters.
Yeah, I think it's, I kind of go back to it's about how you feel about what you can accomplish. Like you can't always do everything, but if you've made up the decision that there are these 5 things that are roadblocks, then you're never going to find a way around them. Like you try to find and navigate through it with the mindset that you're going to find a solution. And yeah, you might run into some roadblocks you just can't get over, but you figure out how to get around them, you know? And I think that's important, the mindset that you have, but also the resources, like you said.
You want to buy a house, but high interest rates have got you down? Take the rate challenge and send us a verifiable loan estimate from another lender, and we'll beat it and pay for your appraisal up to $600. Here at Give Mortgage, being powered by U Mortgage allows us to provide you with unmatched speed and efficiency and the best rates and fees in the market, all while delivering you the concierge level service you deserve. We want you to have an experience getting a mortgage that you'll never forget, and not because you got put through a meat grinder to get it. At Give Mortgage, we give great advice, we give the best rates, and we give back to charity. Visit us at www.give-mortgage.com or call us at 480-331-4684 to schedule a free consultation to see how we can help.
So thinking about it from like a consumer sitting out there, you know, watching TV or listening to the radio or whatever, and they see all the advertisements that you hear out there.
We're going to go here.
We're going to go here.
Okay.
How do people not get sucked into thinking that one company or another has some magic solution to selling a house or buying a house? Because the advertisements sound fantastic, like sounds phenomenal. And there's, you know, a lot of these companies out there, they do a great job at marketing. But I think the one thing that consumers don't realize is that there isn't some magical solution that they've all created. Like, what kind of things can you do as an independent real estate agent that people don't realize that you can do, that they may think, hey, there's company A or company B, they're the only way I can get this done?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I mean, I have access to investors. I have access to, doing, I have the ability to just have an open house for one day as well. I mean, all agents do. So if it's...
Wow. That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? And so if my client, let's say they have 5 dogs and, 4 cats and 3 goldfish, they don't want to show the house like just one time because it took them forever to clean it that one day. We could do that, and then maybe we can set it up special, for, private showings, or maybe you want to go. I've heard agents send their clients on a weekend trip and then they, sell it in this market over the weekend. There's options, and, ultimately the seller has the right to sell their house for whatever they want. It's more than anything is just what the market's bearing. So the buyers are basically right now dictating what the price of your home is going to be, right? Based on what they can afford and what they're going to come out of pocket over and above what they are planning. So the gimmicks that are out there, we're all licensed agents the same. We can offer the same solutions. Same with the big name companies that are coming in, and they'll give you top dollar for your house, but and it looks all pretty, and you have like this package, like I said, and a bow on it, and it looks amazing. And I think that I've actually looked into it myself for my own home to see, wonder what they would offer me.
Right.
And you have, for example, if you have solar. You have a solar panels, and you could actually transfer the solar into somebody's name if you sell your home traditionally on the open market, or you could obviously pay it off. Depending on the situation, like you can pay it off with your equity if you can. From what I've learned, all of the big companies that come in and want to buy it, they absolutely make you pay off your solar. And I know solar is really popular right now, and you don't know that until then maybe you listened to them and they told you everything you wanted to hear, and then they forgot to tell you all the stuff that matters. So, but I think that, all licensed agents have the ability to do all the same things if you wanted to accomplish them. But I think what you're going to find, just like, okay, a good analogy. So just the convenience store on the corner has milk, and so does like the grocery store.
Yep.
And one is more expensive than the other because one is what?
Convenient.
So you might be okay with it one time because, you didn't feel like going all the way down to the grocery store. You didn't want to get out of the car and like walk, 100 extra steps. I don't know. You wanted to just pop in and pop out. You want to get gas done at the same time as getting your milk was the same thing. So it's just, but then you kind of like have knowledge of that, that's what's happening. So I would just suggest making sure that is that really the convenience fee that you're willing to pay? Was that extra, that extra 5 minutes that you got to yourself, not going an extra 100 steps to get the other milk at the fries that saved you $1. I just said fries, but
okay.
I just like fries. So I would say, I've seen it on paper where, people are paying $20,000, $30,000 out of convenience. They didn't even maybe realize that they were doing just to save maybe a week.
That's some expensive milk.
Right. So like if you have, I'm saying like if you want to sell your house fast, you can do that. If you want to get a post-possession, you can do that. If you want to be able to, have a cash buyer, you can do that. But not have to spend $20,000 to $30,000 or however much it is, as a convenience to get. And maybe you did have to wait an extra week, or maybe you just had to, had to show your house like 2 days, So, there's things that's like, maybe you have to think about, again, interview at least a minimum of 3 different agents. Let them show you, the cost comparison. And then you can decide, is that convenience worth it to you?
Yeah, because sometimes the convenience is worth it, but you have to know what that cost really is. Because, like in your milk analogy, yeah, $1, okay, that's convenient, it's worth it. But like to sell my house in a way that I could do the same thing or very close to the same thing, and it might save me tens of thousands of dollars, yeah, that doesn't become a convenience that's worth it anymore when it costs that much. But I think unfortunately some people get too far into it, and they've bought so into the conveniencing, and they didn't investigate any other options that may be equally as convenient or close to as convenient, but way less expensive.
The convenience store is not going to spend their time trying to explain to you like what your options are and how you could save money down the road.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is it. This is what it is. And they're not going to try to help you to understand why they're just going to say, this is what it is. And like, if you want the convenience, this is what you're going to pay. There's not like an explanation. Well, if you go to the other company, or the store, you don't have to, if you just like go extra 100 steps to the inside or whatever it is. Or, well, now they started having beer at the convenience stores. Did you know that?
No.
I just saw it down the road over here.
They have beer at the convenience stores, huh?
No, I shouldn't say it like that. Craft beer, IPAs.
Oh, okay.
Not just beer. That sounded really
On tap?
silly. On tap.
I think I've seen that one place.
So
yes.
all convenience stores mostly have beer and liquor and stuff like that. No, like on tap.
You haven't been out shopping for beer much lately, have you?
I'm the worst.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing that I can think to tell consumers about all this stuff is when you see an advertisement for something that just sounds really slick and really great, like think about the fact that it's packaged that way and made to look as appealing and pretty to you as possible. 9 times out of 10, there's a cost to that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, check other options, because that's unfortunately what happens, and statistics bear it out. Like, I don't remember the exact number, but it's over 50% of people go with the first realtor that they talk to. So like if you're not talking to another person, or like you start with one of these big companies, it's advertising all the time, and you don't find an alternative to that, you're not going to be made aware, to your point. Like they're not going to teach you about what the other options are. They're there to sell you their offering and to make their money. They're not going to give you those other options. And if you talk to an independent agent, then you're going to find out, well, wait a minute, this whole thing about, cash buyer, cash offer, oh, you can do that too. I can stay in my house for up to 6 months. Oh, I can do that too. Well, the reality is if your buyer is buying with financing, you're not gonna be able to stay for 6 months, which you don't find that out until too late.
Right.
Or, any of the other things that they're trying to sell you as unique offerings, you got to find out that they're not unique. You got to look at what the actual cost is. Like the convenience of, being out of your house for 2 hours one weekend to sell your house. That's cool. That's convenient. But how many people are missing out on the opportunity to see your house, which could mean you could get a better offer at a higher price, because you're limiting your window of opportunity down to 2 hours on one weekend. Like I saw a post the other day from somebody that said, yeah, they were only holding the house open for like 10 a.m. to 12 on Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And he's like, my clients are at church. They're not going to see the house. So they're not going to make an offer. And then it ends up turning out, well, they were prepared to make a better offer than what they ended up accepting on the property. And a lot of times those ones that they think are so good, people didn't get to see the house. It's sight unseen. They got to make this offer because they couldn't get in that 2-hour window. And then you get into your inspection period.
I guess what would you do then? In that case, I would actually be calling. I mean, I don't know for sure if they would say yes, but I would have called the listing agent and let him know, like, my client's prepared to make such and such offer. However, they're going to be at church during that time. I would really, love the opportunity and to show it at a different time, and it would be a benefit to your client. And I don't know, that's why I think they just changed that now, though, I believe. So you still have to call. I would always call the listing agent. We're not supposed to put that on there anyway. You're not supposed to put on the MLS anymore, like this type of verbiage.
Well, and I think that's the key is, like, if you make the call and you ask for other opportunities, you might get it, you might not. Like, it depends on how hardcore that listing agent is going to be with how they're going to, make that property available. But you don't know unless you try. And that's... I mean,
look, we're supposed to present all offers, so...
Yeah, but you don't have to make the property available to anybody at any time. No, you
can just make an offer and then, just have it in front of them. And if the seller says, no, your offer's not great and we're not going to let you see the house, well, then that's on them. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think that, we're all guilty of not being able to say no sometimes. Whenever we have that first dangling carrot or, sparkly thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes we really are like, oh, I just get so excited. And then you regret it after the fact. So, I mean, I try to practice. I'm not the best at it either. Being diligent about, taking the time, make a decision, think about it, ponder, fact find, look up reviews, things like that. And then, making a decision based off that. And then also from a consumer standpoint, from me being a realtor, I enjoy being the voice for my client. So not everybody's made equally, right? So I do this for a living, and they maybe are, maybe they're like a fashion designer. I don't know. I just think, and then they wouldn't, be speaking in fashion, like in real estate jargon all the time. Right. And so then I get to be that person for them. And so then, they'll ask me questions and I can elaborate for them and be able to be their eyes and ears and mouth, to be able to navigate through, buying a house or selling their house. They're depending on me to do that. So it's something that I take pride in, as far as just like you, we take our profession seriously, where we want to be the best advocate for our client. That's why they hire us, to do their job, so that they get to do the job that they are working full time doing their job. So we should be able to give them that comfort in knowing that we're going to do the best job for them buying the house.
Right. So if somebody comes to you right now and says, I'm worried about what the market is doing, is this a good time for me to buy a house? What would you tell them as we sit here today?
I mean, I've never been asked that question. Not once this whole entire time. I mean, people are still buying houses, and I would say that, being a renter at one point in my life, and, I look at it from a mathematical equation. I do know a little bit of math. And I would probably...
You do have 10 fingers and 10 toes, right?
I do. And so I would do the math based off of, how much... So if you wait 2 years, and then you do the math on how much you just put into a wastebasket and that you're never going to get back, or, you make it an investment. And believe it or not, even the high interest rate now is lower than it had been in the past. So I think it's our brains that tell us oh my gosh, the interest rates are so high. But in reality, they're really actually much lower, than they have been at times when, our families have bought homes in the past, or elders. And I think that, so as far as where I would like to invest my money, I would want to invest it in real estate, obviously, would be the best than to just pay somebody else's, bills. So it's always a good time to buy. It's always a good time to buy. And I mean, I think it matters what price point you're at and then where you bought the home at, how much, like, for example, you know, if you did have to pay, you know, a shortfall or a gap in the appraisal from the purchase price, you know, just, I think that it's important to know then how long are you going to stay in the house?
Right.
You know, and when are you going to get your return? Because we have, obviously, all of us have seen the ups and downs in the market through our history. So I don't think there's a bad time. I think that we don't all have the crystal ball that we all would like to have. We can just do it based off of our experience and history. But then a lot of my clients that didn't want to buy a couple of years ago were like, oh my gosh, I should have bought then, when they thought it wasn't a good time to buy.
Right.
So, I mean, the answer, I don't know. The answer is in the question.
Uh-oh, you're going seriously philosophical here now.
I think the answer is, do you want to buy a house? Yes. Okay, then it's a great time. I mean, there's really not a bad time to buy a house or even to sell your house.
I feel like you're doing a little Yoda thing there.
I know. I don't know.
The answer is in the question.
The answer, I don't know. I tend to talk like Yoda.
Well, I think, you know, I get this question, you get this question, and like the motivation is the key. Like you said, if it's, I want to go buy someplace to live in, or my family's getting bigger and I need a bigger house or things like that, like that's the overriding need. And you do look at what's projected to happen in the market, but that doesn't necessarily outweigh what your actual needs are. The other people on the other end of the spectrum that are just like looking at it as an investment property, or I don't want to say speculation, but like they feel like things are going to go in a certain direction, and so they want to get in and invest. I think the point that you made is really important. Like the little bit of a slowdown that we're seeing now because of interest rates going up, that point of reference that people have has to get reset, because we're where we are. We are now where we were back in like 2018, 2019 with interest rates.
Yeah, I bought my house at 4.5%.
Yeah, I mean, people were still buying and selling houses.
Yeah.
Now, houses have gotten a lot more expensive, but that's, I think, the big concern a lot of people have is it going to keep going? Is there's this bubble that's going to burst? And like we always break it down the same way. Like if you're debating between renting and buying, that's an easy answer. And it comes down to, can you afford it? Obviously, you don't want to get into something you can't afford to make the payment on, but you're going to make a mortgage payment one way or the other. It's either going to be your house or the landlord's house. So you can put something that you're going to build equity in, or someone else is going to build equity in. So if you can afford it, then yeah, you should be buying real estate, because there's a lot of strong data that says that home values are going to keep going up. They're not going to keep going up at 30% like we have, probably not 10%. But even if it goes back to the norm, 4 or 5%, that's still a good solid investment for people, especially when you can build your own equity instead of the landlord's equity.
Well, we can talk. I love talking real estate. But I mean, I feel like you can go on for days about it. I mean, at the end of the day, like we're living in a society, I think too, that is just always go, go, go. I have myself. I mean, I've lived in a lot of different cities. I haven't just lived in the same home for many, many years. As a matter of fact, it's ironically, I actually had lived in a rental for the longest time I've ever lived in one house. So like that I've owned like 7 houses, and this house that I rented was for 8 years. And I do the math on that, how much I paid in rent. It's horrible. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, just doing basic math, like 12 times 8. What is that? It's a lot, right?
Yeah. 96.
Okay. So it's 9. It's like, I think it's like 96,000 when you do like 1,000. It's a lot.
Wow.
Think about that. So good job for my landlord. But I mean, for me, I feel like I got scared. I didn't want to, buy at a time that, I didn't think I could yet. And, could I afford the payments and stuff like that? And I think, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I didn't. And so, but it's okay, because, if you can live somewhere for a long time, you don't look at it from like a short-term investment, right? It's a long-term investment. Then you'll get your money back, and then there'll be a time where it's time to sell again. And then if you're ready and you want to sell, just like everyone else is taking advantage of this time, then the same thing. So I think it just matters. You just have to be mindful of where you're buying, how much you're buying for, how long you're planning on staying there, what your goals are for your life. Do you plan on going, what your situation is, so I think those all factor in. And then even if let's say you're in a single, you want to buy a house and then you end up getting married, like you can turn it into a rental and then go buy another house, and then you have a portfolio started. So there's just so much, to think about. And I really believe that, if you have the right people in your life and you're exposed to, other people that even have like even way more knowledge than you do, they still do not have access to this crystal ball. They really, they're, like we just hope and pray that they do know everything and that we can listen. You have to listen to your instincts and your gut too, not just, what this person says. I think we're all equipped with that. But yeah, I love that what real estate can do for you. And I think that, if you have the investment, and even if I feel like you have to tell me this though, the loans that they have today, I feel like are way better than they were, in 2008.
Oh yeah.
2006.
Yeah. It's very different. There's some similarities in terms of loan products that are coming back, but who they're available to is very, very different. So back then, you had stated income loans or no documentation loans. And they got to the point where when they first started those were for people that were self-employed who, wrote off all their expenses on their taxes. It looked like they didn't make any money. The reality was they made plenty of money to afford payments. And so they had to have good credit and they had to put a lot of money down. Like the first no-doc loans, you had to put 35% down. And then it slowly got to the point where you could have like 580 credit, state that you made $150,000 a year working at McDonald's for 6 months and put no money down on an investment property. Like there's no way those loans should have been made. And that's what was being made. And that's what, caused all the problems that we came into.
Right.
Now that doesn't exist anymore. There are some of the similarities in kind of no documentation, not fully no documentation, but like bank statement loans, loans we call DSCR loans. Those are for investment properties. Those types of loans are back now, but they're mostly reserved for investors. And they still are requiring good chunks of money down, a minimum of like 10%, 20%, 25% down. So people have more invested in it. But the other thing that it gives is more opportunity for people, because sometimes people, they're self-employed, especially through this, COVID pandemic, that a lot of small businesses had drastic income fluctuations. And if they were sitting on the sidelines, they thought, well, I only showed that I made $20,000 last year in my taxes. I can't qualify to buy a house. Well, reality is you're not going to know if you can unless you talk to somebody about it, like myself, a loan officer. Start with you, whatever, and then we'll just like figure out what's your situation. We'll look at your bank statements. We'll look at your taxes. We'll figure out like how much money do you have down? Do you have good credit? Do you need to work on some stuff? And you can find a path forward to help them get into a place where they can qualify to buy a house. And it's just a different environment now because it's not being irresponsible with giving those kind of loans to anybody.
Right. And that's where my passion comes from. So I had we don't have to finish our time talking about this, but I did have an experience in my life where we did get a stated loan. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely one of those like, oh, please don't. I didn't want us to get approved for it, to be honest. And, I really didn't, because our payment was like ridiculous. And it was like $4,200 or something on a $500,000 house, and had a 3-year arm, balloon payment, all this stuff. So, but what's really important, brings me back to that, is that who you have in place and like the loan officers you use or the realtors that you use, I think they all matter and they have your best interests at heart. And I think at that time that wasn't what the case was. I don't know. That's just my personal feeling and opinion. And then ultimately what happened was my husband at the time, he didn't get a paycheck. And so then we went into a short sale situation. Well, anyway, long story short, he ended up getting a motorcycle because he wasn't going to be able to afford his car payment anymore. And then he got hit on his motorcycle and got killed.
Oh my gosh.
So like, that's a real dramatic like story, but I like really have such passion about helping people like you do with your loans and stuff, because, every decision that's made, and it's not because I blame anybody. It's not about that, but I do believe that we have no control over, like, again, is it a good time to buy a house? Maybe it was at the time. We didn't know that that was going to happen. We didn't know that one decision was going to cause this decision to happen, and we had no control in knowing what that was going to happen. But that just leads me to say, though, like, it is important who you have in your life and the people that, you know, are servicing your loans and things like that to care, especially like during these times and COVID and the decisions that we've made as far as like the loans go. So I think that it's important to have the best realtor and the best loan officer in place because, you know, it does make a difference. And we don't have control over all the things in life that happen, but I think that it does matter in the long run, you know, the what we think about, you know, could happen. And so that's what I have to say. It's really important.
Yeah, I think that what you said a few minutes ago is like key to all that is thinking big picture about stuff, like asking, and you should have a real estate agent, you should have a lender that's asking those questions, like what is your plan long term? Because there's different ways that you could go with your decision making depending upon what your longer term plan is. And if you get people who are supposed to be helping you too fixated on just the immediate thing that you think that you want and not thinking about, you know, beyond today, you might be making the wrong decision for what's good for you in the long term just to satisfy that immediate want. I think that's, you know, goes back to your whole point of finding the right people who are thinking about things from what's best for you and what's best in your big picture.
Well, the debt to income ratio had to have been in the 60s. I mean, it had to have been 60%. Like, I'm just saying. So what I'm saying is that to people out there is that the loans are so much better now. And so when they're talking about this bubble and like 2008 and all this is going to happen, my personal experience, I just don't think that's going to happen based on what the loan programs are now and what they've had in place since then. So my prayer and hope is that, you know, that isn't the case because, you know, we don't want that to happen. We don't want, you know, that all to happen again. But I would just hope that, you know, we're really blessed to be in Arizona. We have a great economy here. And, you know, people can stay in their homes forever and ever if they'd like. And nowadays, the rent's actually more than a house payment. So you might have, that's something to think about.
Yeah, rents are getting kind of crazy.
Yeah, rents are getting kind of crazy. I mean, I know there's like a 1-bedroom apartment. You can get it for $2,100. What a steal.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think those things matter. So when I share that, it's more just because I do care about consumers and about the choices. And ultimately, I mean, we've all been young. We make these choices. We think that we know everything. And, you know, you probably would make it all over again. You know, we wouldn't know the consequences of it. So we just have to do our best in educating consumers and knowing, you know, what the options are and then hope that they like make a decision for themselves and, you know, feel good about it later. So I love to call my clients now that I sold a house to a couple of years ago. Aren't you so glad you bought a house? And I hope to do the same in the next couple of years for my clients who are buying houses now. Like, aren't you so glad that you bought your house so that they have all this equity? Yeah. So that is my hope and prayer.
Well, and that's the way that most people end up building their own personal wealth is by real estate, like owning a home, not paying somebody else's mortgage for them, and building up equity because people can use that to trade up, to continue to invest, and ultimately, you know, retire at home and access some of that built up equity and even provide the option for them to pass on those assets, those homes, if they've accumulated homes, to their heirs, to their kids. I mean, it really is something where you can build generational wealth for people by investing in real estate, whether it's just your own primary residence or, you know, multiple properties. Right. And that's a big goal that we have, is to kind of get people to think big picture, look at what you can do with this, and make the right plans to accomplish whatever your goals are. Yeah. So one last final question before we wrap it up. Just think about one piece of advice that you would give to somebody right now that's thinking about buying a home. What would be the number one thing that they should do?
Number one thing that they should do if they were going to buy a house right now, or they want to buy a house? Yeah. I would say hire the right realtor. I would say that. That would be
hire me.
I mean, somebody like me, potentially me, but or, you know, call me and I'll help you to interview other agents or give you.
But it comes down to finding the right person to help you, right?
It really does. And I mean, and just educate yourself. Take your time. You know, I just, you know, it's a big decision. And I love clients that have already been looking at houses for over a year. Those are the best. I mean, just because they already know what they want, they've been looking for a long time, and even if you do it like super fast, that's okay too. So that just has to do with hiring the right people so that you're getting as much information as you can, and then, again, look at the big picture, put goals together, write them out, decide how long do I want to live here? How long am I going to be at my job? If I'm going to have kids, I'm not going to have kids. Do I have kids?
Right. I hope you know if you have kids.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
good.
maybe I don't know that. I don't know. But just things like that. So just to be able to put together a big plan and find the right people to help you to achieve those goals. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
That's the idea, yeah. Okay. So if somebody feels like, hey, I think I might have found the right person to help me, and I think it might be Melanie, tell them your contact information. How do they get a hold of you?
Okay, I could do that. Well, my phone number is 623-853-7671. And then my name is spelled differently. So my email is talkwithmelanie@gmail.com. And that's Melanie with just an I. So it's MELANI. talkwithmelani@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today. I appreciate it. Sharing all the knowledge that you've accumulated.
Anytime.
And hopefully people get a lot out of this, and we'll continue to tune into our next episode and bring you some more truth.
Thanks for joining us, and please remember to go and subscribe, like, share, all that cool stuff to help us grow, and come back tomorrow to listen to our next episode. Until then, go out and live life uncensored.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to help us out and subscribe. Follow and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out on YouTube for the full video podcast. If you want more information on any of the topics discussed on today's episode, email us at uncensoredrealestatepodcast@gmail.com or give the Cardenas Mortgage Team a call at 480-331-4684.